Preparing your questions. Next, let's talk about preparing your questions for the interview. In the notes, we've provided a base list to help you get started, but you'll of course want to craft these for each case study that you're doing because every customer is unique and you'll want to highlight different aspects of your product and different ways that customers have been successful. So you'll want to make sure that you've prepared questions that are designed to elicit the information that you need. So I'm going to go through these one by one and explain what they are and what you should be aware of as you're putting your question list together. The very first things are the basic contact information for the person that you're contacting. You want to make sure you have their name, their title, and their email address. Make sure you have correct spellings for each of those so that if you reference it in the case study, you're going to be prepared and not have an embarrassing situation later. After the initial chit-chat in the conversation and capturing that contact information, you want to start getting the background information for the client's situation before they selected you. So one of the things we ask is what was going on in your organization that led you to begin looking for a solution like our product. That way we can get some background information. You want to get them to talk about whatever the problem was that was causing them to take action. Because if they had that problem, it's very likely that similar companies will have the same kind of problem. And you want to capture the language that they use to describe that problem so that as you're writing copy and writing the case study later, you'll have the right phrasing to have your messaging resonate with other prospective customers later. The next question is, what other solutions did you consider? These may or may not be your competitors. They may have tried to build something in-house. They may have been using an off-the-shelf product. For example, for a lot of analysis software applications, people start with trying to use Excel or SPSS or some kind of generic analysis or tracking program. Then they realize they need a more specialized tool. So you want to capture what they were using so that other people who are using or trying those solutions will see themselves in the case study. Also, if you have multiple tiers of service in your software, are there features that are only available in the higher tiers that maybe this interviewee is using? You want to make sure that you probe for the value. And the next question that we like to ask is, as you considered other solutions, what did you like best about our company? And the reason we ask that is that we want to be able to talk to prospective users about the reasons that they might choose our company. You should already have an idea of what the answers for this question are before you speak to the customer. Ideally, you will have already reviewed the sales notes in your CRM and spoken to the sales rep who managed the deal, so that you're prepared when you get into the interview situation to probe for additional information about those other solutions and what they liked best about ours. What solutions did our company provide for your organization? Again, you should already have a pretty good idea of what this answer is going to be, but you want to customize this based on the information that you have about what they've licensed or what services they've purchased. This is a really good place where if there are multiple tiers of your software, you want to make sure you highlight the features that are only available on the higher tiers that perhaps this customer is using. This is a really good way to differentiate the added value to real live customers for those higher sale tiers. Also, make sure you consult your product messaging map. Make sure you've prepared follow-up questions that probe each of your most important features in your message map to ask them what value they're getting from those features if possible. Now, you don't want to make this too long, too drawn out, but the more you can encourage them to speak freely about those kinds of ways that they're using the software product, the better. The next question we ask to set the magnitude of the value of the solution. How critical is the performance of this solution to your business? The more critical it is, the more compelling your case study is going to be. So you want to make sure that you set that question up properly, because as you're writing, that helps you generate drama and interest within the story. The next set of questions probe into the customer's experience with the team and the company. We ask, what can you tell us about the implementation of this solution? You want to show other prospects what to expect. Is it difficult? Is it hard? And it's okay if the customer mentions that there were challenges, because if you have a complex product, customers are going to be fearful of challenges that might crop up. You want to make sure that you talk about how you solved any of those problems that occurred, particularly if there are common problems that people face when they implement your solution. A good example of this is migrating data from one CRM to another or from one marketing automation system to another. Whenever a customer is changing from one big solution to another big solution, that transition is often fraught with challenges. And some of them you can foresee, some of them you can't. The more that you can talk candidly and address those fears ahead of time, the more powerful and persuasive your case study will be. And next, we like to ask about customer service. What can you say about the customer service you received from our company? You want to capture what they thought was significant. You know all the great things that your customer service team is putting together for customers, but you want to capture what they felt was really important. Not only because it helps in this case study, but it'll be helpful as market information for your future copywriting. And what can you say about the cost of our solution? This is really key and you may or may not use this information in the final draft, but you want to get in their words how they explain their perception of the cost and how they define the perceived value of your product. Now, again, you may or may not choose to put this in the final version of this case study, but sometimes you can get some really great quotes that add a lot of texture and value. Even if you don't use it, it's good information for your marketing team. Also, I always like to ask, how could we make our solution better for you and your team? This is clearly not necessarily one that will drive content for the case study, but while you're speaking to the customer, it's a really powerful piece of information to get. They've already shared what they like about your company and your product. This is a natural place to probe for information about how you could serve them better and make your product even better. Because it's at the end of the interview, you're very likely to get increased candor that you might not get in a pure market research call or casual customer interaction. Another question I like to ask is, for your peers who aren't familiar with our company, what would you like them to know about us? You can get some amazing answers to this question, things that you and your marketing and sales team never even thought about as important messaging. The next question we probe for, we're asking the advice of the customer about sharing information with people like him or her. Before you go into the interview, this is another piece of information you should get from your sales team if your marketing team hasn't already compiled it. You want to compile a list of common objections that salespeople face in the sale. If there are one or two that you think might be relevant for this customer or customers very similar to this customer, for someone who might have enter this common objection, what would you say to them? This helps you capture the way that the customers that you've successfully sold to address that question or objection that prospective customers might have. Probably, if this is a big software deal, that person or whoever your internal champion for the deal has already had to answer that objection internally. So you can get some pretty interesting information here. And then I always like to ask, is there anyone else I should speak to? Because sometimes you might have multiple people in a department who touch different aspects of your software. If that's the case, then having multiple perspectives from those people definitely gives you more nuance and texture.